Hi, this is Mick with Bushcraft. I'm just out in the woods today, and I wanted to show you a tulip poplar leaf. If you spend any time on the internet looking at fire starting, you'll see that tulip poplar, or often called yellow poplar, occurs many times in the internet as being a very good wood to build a bow drill set out of. And I want to show you how to identify this plant. This is a leaf from the tulip poplar. It sort of has a shape like the tulip flower, and so it's very distinctive. There's no other plant that I've seen that's close to this same kind of shape. Whenever you see this, you have found a tulip poplar. And the tulip poplar, again, is good for building bow drill sets from. You could do everything, spindle, baseboard, everything out of a tulip poplar. This is how you find it, with these leaves. If you don't find the leaves, then here is the tree itself. It's got a rough bark. It grows very tall. This particular tree is fairly young. The leaves are fairly small. What's odd is on the tiniest of trees, you will often see the most gigantic of leaves. This tree is fairly mature, but it has fairly small leaves. The gigantic leaf that I showed you didn't come off of this tree. But let's zoom in a little bit here. This is the kind of bark that this tree has. It's sort of a light gray color. It's rough. And look for this tree. So if you don't see any leaves or don't notice the leaves for some reason, this is the kind of bark to look for. It's a nice straight tree in general. This is an example of a little clover called wood sorrel, and it's very tiny and it grows in clumps. And the wood sorrel is different from regular clover because it has these tiny heart-shaped leaves, and they're very, very specifically heart-shaped, and they grow in these little clumps of 3 leaves each. And the reason wood sorrel is something I'm showing you is because it's edible if a dog hasn't peed on it. It's very sour and even a little peppery. It's almost like eating a green plum. So wood sorrel, little clover that you can use to when you're foraging. Okay, a quick note about wood sorrel. It tends to grow at the boundary of 2 different kinds of terrain. So, for example, along a trail, there'll be the hard dirt of the trail, and then off the trail will be a different kind of soil. And the wood sorrel likes to grow at that boundary, I'm told. And that matches up with my own experience, because I tend to only find wood sorrel when I'm walking along a trail. That's not to say that wood sorrel can't be found in other terrain changeover areas, but that's where I find it. So. Okay, it's June in Georgia, and this is a muscadine, wild muscadine vine. It's like a wild grape. And again, if you're foraging a little bit later in the year, these will have nice thick-skinned fruits on them if the squirrels and the birds haven't gotten to them first, and the deer. So keep keep an eye out for this vine. This vine will grow all over the place, all up and through trees and bushes, and then down low and up high. So if you watch for this vine with this special kind of leaf, this rough grape looking leaf, then you may have a chance later in the season to enjoy some muscadines. Okay, when it comes to eating wild food, I'm a wilderness survival merit badge counselor for the Boy Scouts, and we teach the 7 priorities when it comes to wilderness survival, and the very dead last priority is food. And there's a reason for that. Most of the time you're going to get found. If you do the other 6 things right, you're going to get found and you're going to be okay. You might be hungry and you might be a little miserable, but you'll get found before you really have to worry about food. When I show you things like wood sorrel that could be eaten, be very careful about that, because you personally might be allergic to some of this stuff. And there's a protocol to follow to determine, like if you got dropped into Borneo somewhere with all these unfamiliar plants, there's a kind of a protocol to follow to find out if you're going to be allergic to it or if it's going to be dangerous for you. So even if it's okay for me to eat, it may not be okay for you to eat. Be aware of that. So this wood sorrel that I just ate, be very careful before you eat anything like that. And if you eat quantities of it, see, I just have one little leaf and you saw how small they were. If you eat large quantities of some of this wild foliage, it's got acids and things in it that could upset your stomach. And the real problem, other than outright poisoning from eating wild food, is that if you get sick and start throwing up, you're losing valuable hydration in your body. You're losing water in your body when you throw up. So it's always better, and water is much higher on the priority list than food is on purpose. It's much better to conserve your water and be very careful about losing your water than it is to risk it on eating something that's unfamiliar to you. So heads up about that. Conserve your water and be very, very careful and very sure about wild food. You can hear last night's rain still falling from the trees. Okay, here's another plant, dandelion, that's edible. I'm not going to eat this one because it might have been sprayed. I'm near civilization now, but see these raggedy leaves? So even if this flower is missing, if you see a clump of leaves radiating out that are ragged like this, this is dandelion. And it's quite edible. You even get them at frou-frou restaurants sometimes in your salad.